Welcome into Kingdom Keys, the official pregame podcast for Arrowhead Pride with Price Carter, Nate Christensen, Maurice Elston. I am Nick Schwerdt, and guys, it took till week 2, but the Chiefs got the first win of the season, and now we are fully loaded, fully healthy, ready for, I think, a game that has a lot of Chiefs fans, and I would imagine a lot of guys in that locker room sort of licking their chops with the Chicago Bears sort of limping into this game. We'll get into this matchup, but the Bears were a sexy pick over the offseason. They acquired DJ Moore. Maybe Justin Fields will take a big step into week 3 or into year 2, and haven't quite seen that yet in Chicago. So should be a good one this weekend, at least if you're looking for the Chiefs to get on track offensively. The defense has been stealing the show. But before we get to the game, Price, what's the injury report? How are the Chiefs looking here for this week 3 matchup?
Okay, so probably the most notable injury is going to actually be on the Bears side. Their left tackle Braxton Jones went on the injured reserve with a neck injury. So that's probably the most notable. He will definitely be out for this game. On the Bears side, defensive back Eddie Jackson didn't participate in practice on Thursday. Neither did Nate Davis. He's a guard that they signed this year, but it looks like he'll probably be back. That was a personal reason, not an injury related. For the Chiefs, the list is a little lengthy. Nick Bolton didn't practice today on Thursday. Neither did Richie James or Kadarius Toney. It sounds like from what our own Pete Sweeney said, Richie James is probably going to be out a period of time, so don't expect him to suit up for this game. Nick Bolton and Kadarius Toney are a little bit more, might come down to the wire as to whether they're going to play. Keep a close eye on Friday. Usually Andy likes his guys to practice on Friday before they play. The good news is, if Nick Bolton does go down, they've got their man. Why can't I remember the linebacker's last name?
Drew
Tranquil. Yeah, they've got Drew Tranquil. Yeah. Sorry, I just had the brain farts of all brain farts there. But they've got Drew Tranquil that can step right into the mic role. He has played a little bit more last week anyways. So good news there if Nick Bolton does go down.
Yeah, it seems like the positions or the players that we're talking about, knock on wood, are at positions where the Chiefs do have a little bit of depth, right? This isn't Travis Kelce missing week 1 where it's like, okay, we got Blake Bell out there who Mahomes is throwing to on 3rd and long with the game on the line. It feels like those are sort of the spots where you can't afford to miss a guy if that ends up being the case for Sunday.
Yeah, and I honestly, in the best way possible, it may not be the worst thing in the world for there to be some attrition in the wide receiver room right now. It definitely feels like they're still working out the rotation. I wonder if having 7 wide receivers is part of what's led to some of the inconsistencies in the room so far. These guys just got to get snaps. And this is, I think this stretch here that the Chiefs are about to go through, I think the record of the next 6 teams they play is 1-11. They need to get this wide receiver room figured out. And if they're going to play Rashee Rice or Justin Ross, and some of the younger guys, let them make their mistakes against the Bears and the Broncos and teams like that. So that way, when it comes time to pay the Bengals and the Bills and AFC contenders, they've figured out the rotation.
All right, guys, this is our 3rd episode of Kingdom Keys this year. And my keys for each of the first 2 episodes were the wide receiver. I'll just say it right now. I'm not focusing on the receivers today, but I want to see if that streak's going to stay alive. Let's get to our keys for Chiefs, Bears. Nate, why don't you start us off? Are you going to keep the streak alive? Are you focusing on the wide receivers this week?
A little bit, but it's more about kind of a overall offensive thing. One thing that when I go back and watch the games, I'm thinking is there's a lot of time for Patrick Mahomes to throw, and yet there's not a lot of downfield throws, right? It's kind of this weird kind of juxtaposition. So I was like, okay, let me take a look at this. So if you look at time to throw in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes right now is right under 3 seconds. The guys above him are Zach Wilson, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, and Jalen Hurts, and Bryce Young, who are all notorious for holding the ball forever. So Mahomes right now is right around he's tied for 6th in the NFL in time to throw. But if you look at completed air yards, he's among the lowest in the NFL. He's at 4.6, according to Next Gen Stats. The guys under him, I'll just read them real quick, is Fields, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Anthony Richardson, and Bryce Young. A lot of struggling offenses or a lot of rookie quarterbacks. Average intended air yards is more friendly to Mahomes. He's more around league average at 7.7. But his aggressiveness percentage is among the lowest in the league at 11.3%. That's among the bottom 10. every statistical indicator kind of suggests this kind of weird juxtaposition where the Chiefs, where the offensive line's playing very well. They're not giving up sacks. They're not giving up a lot of pressures. I know Juwan Taylor's had the issues last week, the penalties, but he still played like a good game overall. It's just the fact that the Chiefs aren't able to complete things downfield right now, especially off like play action and things like that. And, you know, this week the Bears obviously had the issue with their defensive coordinator leaving. We're not exactly clear why, but he's not around this week in the middle of a game plan. It's a very just not talented defense at all. I want to see some explosive plays. Let's get some targets downfield moving. Let's move things beyond the sticks. Like, I know that the Chiefs last year became this kind of brute efficiency team at times, but they still were like among the league leaders in like explosive plays. And through 2 weeks, they've not been able to generate many explosive throws downfield at all. So let's see it. Let's get Sky Moore going downfield. Let's get other players that, you know, Rashee Rice. Let's get them going downfield. Justin Ross, maybe throw him a fade like 20 yards downfield. Like, I just want to see the Chiefs in a game where they have a huge talent advantage, where they have a huge coaching advantage, everything. Just attempt passes downfield. And maybe it won't work, but I think that they need to almost like build like confidence. It's like seeing a shot go beyond from 3, right? Like at some point you just got to let your shooter shoot. It's the same thing here. Like, even if it doesn't work at like a super high efficiency, let's just try and get the offense going downfield.
Yeah, last week specifically, it looked really difficult. I think in week 1, you can a lot of times just chalk that up to, okay, they're rusty, whatever the case may be, because a lot of teams look bad in week 1. To see the offensive struggles carry over into week 2, I think that was when a lot of people's antennas started going up to say, okay, is there something to be concerned about here? Where are you guys at now, 2 weeks, seeing this offense look like a shell of their former selves? Is this still getting comfortable, everybody meshing and gelling and getting into the flow of the season? Or do you guys think there are bigger concerns at play here?
I mean, I think it's everybody gelling thing still. I think it's still early with that many new receivers in the room. I mean, the only receiver you really bringing back from last year that was here a whole season last year was MVS and Watson, right? So you still got young receivers. Teams have kind of went the first 2 weeks, you've seen a lot of zone defense against the Chiefs. And kind of what I've seen from the young receivers is just honestly a lot of spacing issues. And being able to find that space, find where to sit down, and where Mahomes is thinking they're going to sit, they're drifting and things of that nature. So I really feel like that as time you would think that it would take place, but then it goes to say like, hey, can we find a good rotation where these players can get an adequate amount of snaps where they can get that chemistry and get that comfortability to find the spaces and be on the same page with Mahomes. I just don't think one receiver has really had enough snaps to really build that.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. It just feels like everything is just really close, and it's just execution. You know, the first week there was the missing Travis Kelce, the drops. Then this next week, they're playing in the heat. And also the Jaguars are a good team. One thing that really stood out to me whenever I was writing this week, and obviously keep in mind these are PFF, so these scores are subjective. Please save all your hate for Twitter. But these are the scores of the offensive line right now, and they just don't scream what the Chiefs have had. Creed Humphrey is 18th out of 33 centers. Joe Tooney's 21st out of guards. Trey Smith is 24th out of 71 guards. Donovan Smith is 53rd out of 71 qualifying tackles. Juwan Taylor 63rd out of 71 qualifying tackles. They just haven't been getting it done in the trenches and run blocking particularly. That's the spot that sticks out to me quite a bit. Piggybacking off of what Nate said, the comment you hear the most about Tua Tagovailoa right now so much is that they can't sack him. He's throwing the ball downfield, but they can't sack him because the ball is out so quick. Because what do they have? They have the ultimate separators. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill can get open in 2 seconds because they run so fast. And the Chiefs have the opposite of that. So I definitely thought, surprisingly, whenever they started using more inside zone and power with Pacheco in the second half, the running game took off and it looked a little bit better, and the offense opened up a little bit too. So I definitely think that's something that they're going to have to work on too. But right now I lean towards execution, but we're starting to enter the territory where it legitimately might just be a skill player issue.
So I would compare it, like, it's almost like the Chiefs feel very like constrained right now. It feels like in a basketball court when you're compare basketball game, like when you're playing with like 2 non-shooters and you're trying to like drive to the basket and you're like running into like 3 shot blockers. Like that's how the Chiefs offense sort of feels right now. It feels like they just don't have like space to operate. That you know, whether that's both in the the run and pass game, even I know this is going to be this touchdown to Sky Moore. That's a hard throw, that Mahomes didn't make on the back shoulder. There was not a lot of space there. It just doesn't feel like the Chiefs right now. When a few years ago, and this was when they had Tyreek Hill, they just had all this space to throw all the time, wide open windows. There's just not those windows right now at all.
Well, I'll go you one further with the basketball analogy. It also kind of feels like they're all looking around waiting for Steph Curry to make the logo three from midcourt, and someone's waiting for a big play to happen. And the only times the offense has looked really good is no huddle situations. There was a drive in the Lions game right before half. They went right down the field and scored, and then they went and did it again in the Jacksonville game. It just feels like they're thinking a lot. To your point about the spacing too, the Chiefs are towards the bottom of the league. I don't have the number right in front of me, but I retweeted it on my profile that basically the Chiefs are facing not a lot of too high anymore. Teams aren't afraid of them. They're clouding the intermediate zones now again because they don't have the X factor. They're facing a lot less too high than they used to. So it feels like teams are challenging them in that way. So they're going to have to find a way to counteract. The good news is usually we're sitting around talking about the defense and how much it struggles. That's not struggling. And if I had to pick a side to be remain confident in over a period of time, it's going to be the offense with Pat and Andy.
To that point, though, Price, with the way that teams are defending the Chiefs, Andy Reid is the ultimate counterpuncher because that's what every single team in the NFL, no matter how successful you are offensively, there are really good defensive coordinators. They will find something to, at the very least, slow you down. And whenever that has happened under Andy Reid in Kansas City, he has always adjusted. And it doesn't always happen instantaneously. Sometimes it may take 4 weeks. It may take 6 weeks or half a season. But he is the master manipulator, the master tinkerer. And I think that's one thing that's kind of tough early in the season when you want to see this team come out of the gates firing. But using history as a guideline here, Andy will probably find a way, even if this is a personnel issue, even if he doesn't have the guys he thought he did in the offseason, he will find a way to bring the best out of these guys because history would tell you he always does. Maurice, let's go to you, man. What is your key for Chiefs Bears on Sunday?
My key, man, what I really think just for the Chiefs, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball and just to continue good play from the DBs. I think this week with them not really having to come up against some top-tier receivers really where they don't have to focus on really shutting down, I really think we can go out there. Spags can play his man-to-man coverage, right? Man-up, press coverage, and really kind of force Justin Fields to really, fit some balls in there. And I think our DBs match up tremendously well in this situation, especially, Trent McDuffie is playing at a very high level right now. The way Snead was able to slow down really, I think he followed him last game, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of times they had him following the top receiver. Snead started doing it a lot of times at the end of the season last year, and it really came to be successful. And even when the two look beat, their makeup speed and the way they are attacking the ball and using the boundaries to their benefit has really started to shine. And so I love to see the DBs take these 9 big name receivers out of the game and tighten up, because I think that'll really allow the time for our pass rush to get there without blitzing.
Yeah, you look at, and this is very typical of Steve Spagnuolo, but you look at, the blitz numbers, team defense, once again, up in the top third of the NFL. That is kind of his bread and butter. I'll be really interested to see what kind of game plan he comes up with, because there tend to be a handful of games each year where Steve Spagnuolo is the talking point afterwards in a negative sense, right? You go on Twitter, Chiefs Twitter, and people are blasting Spags for his game plan in that specific matchup. And I kind of take that as a nice little solid point of solace here early in the season that there have been no boo birds coming out for Spags so far through 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. Last year I wrote an article about defending Spags right after the Bengals loss, and you would not believe the amount of people who were arguing with me, telling me that I was wrong and that Spags had to go and all that type of stuff. Surprisingly enough, none of them have reached out recently. One thing about Justin Fields too is teams aren't blitzing him at a heavy percentage. They're facing some of the lowest blitz percentages in the league. This man generates pressure all on his own. He's like a pass rusher's best friend. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the video that went around of him. He's got 2 open receivers. He sits in the pocket, looks at them both, goes no, then runs like directly into 2 pass rushers. He's just thinking a lot. He even described himself as robotic. They're probably going to play a decent amount of zone against him, trying to, flood the zones, make sure all the passing lanes are clogged up, and also to protect him against as a runner. I think like the only thing that really concerns me defensively here, and we saw it last year, there was just this dramatic shift in the Bears offense mid-year where it was that Patriots game. They played on Monday Night Football, and they finally started just letting Justin Fields run around and play hero ball. And it caught the Patriots off guard. And we know Bill Belichick's a great defensive mind, and it caught him off guard. If this is the game that the Bears decided to do it, obviously there's been a lot of turmoil in the locker room for them this week. If they decide to do that, it could present some challenges. Thankfully, Spagnuolo has been pretty good against running quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, players like Josh Allen, yes, they've put up big passing numbers against them, but as a runner, they've never really dominated them. Make Justin Fields a thrower. I feel like that's a good path to success for them.
All right, Price, why don't you take it from here then? I want to hear about these wide receivers. I think at this point in the season, until the wide receivers prove themselves for the Chiefs, somebody's going to have to go ahead and bite the bullet and take the wide receivers as their key.
Yeah, I will go ahead and take it. And I'll even take it a step further beyond just wide receivers and seeing someone step up. They've got to figure out who's going to play and who's going to play what role. Surprisingly enough, Justin Watson has been the guy who, Justin Watson has more receiving yards than Jamar Chase through 2 weeks. If you had that on your bingo card, congrats. But at some point, they just are going to have to figure out what role these players are going to fit into. We talked about Richie James a little bit. Sounds like he's probably not going to play with an MCL injury. Richie James, to me, is the player that I am the most, I don't want to say disappointed, but I'm the most surprised about. I thought he was going to have a much larger role in this offense, kind of similar to the McCole Hardman role, and it's just not happened. Justin Ross is basically Jody Fortson as far as like where he's used at, kind of the scheme and the packages that he's used in. I would like to see more of him. And then, yeah, every time we see Rashee Rice with the ball in his hands, it looks fantastic. And he seems to have already kind of got on the same page with Mahomes as far as when a play breaks down scrambling, because at least one of his catches has come off of that. So cleaning up the rotation, and then let's just limit the turnovers from the wide receiver core. Kadarius Toney put a ball on the ground. Justin Watson put a ball on the ground. Pat threw an interception. Richie James dropped a punt. There was potential for 4 turnovers in this game after a turnover heavy game in week 1. They need to figure out who are the guys that they're going to go with. Ideally, I think the big question that needs answered still is who is going to do the Juju role. Right now, it's Justin Watson. I don't necessarily think that that's the person that you want to, but snap percentage wise and where they're playing at, it's Juju. And I would like to see them give Rashee Rice that opportunity.
What do you mean by the Juju role?
So, obviously after Tyreek Hill left, the offense changed a lot. At the beginning, Tyreek Hill was just kind of, hey, go run, go touch the goalpost. We're going to throw the ball deep to you, stretch the field with you. You're going to be the big play threat. And then we're going to have Travis Kelce soak up those intermediate zones. As Tyreek Hill left, Travis Kelce became the primary target in the offense. And basically, Travis Kelce made it so teams did not want to play zone against the Chiefs. And then Juju was one of the few players that could win against man. Right now, the Chiefs are struggling to find someone who can win one-on-one in man coverage. You've got Travis Kelce, who's always going to make it hard for teams to play zone because he's so good at finding those soft spots. But they need someone who can either play out of the slot or play at the X and basically pick up those extra dollar bills that are on the ground that Travis Kelce leaves, essentially meaning like, hey, if there's free yardage, go and get it as far as across the middle, win against man. And then if they do play zone, find those soft spots too. Yes, Juju had some decent run after the catch moments, but if you think about most of the passes he caught last year, it was basically catch the ball, get tackled, stand up, go do it again. He wasn't a big run after the catch type of person. They've got players for that, right? That's what McCole Hardman is for. Kadarius Toney is for. McCole Hardman played in that role last year. They just need someone who can really kind of make teams be disciplined through the middle of the field, especially the slot.
Yeah, I often like to think about like wide receivers to bring up the basketball analogy again. With this particular team, a lot of like coaches, like in basketball, in case people wonder, the only other sport I watch football is basketball, so I'm going to compare them a lot. But like you'll see a team sometimes have like play like 10, 11 people, and then it's like not working because there's just too many, like there's too many minutes, and it's hard to like juggle lineups and things like that. So a lot of coaches will do is like, okay, we're playing 7 guys tonight, and we're only gonna have 1 or 2 guys off the bench, and our best players are gonna play like 40 minutes or whatever. That's kind of what the Chiefs need to do at wide receiver to some extent, and I think they already started doing that last week with Richie James, who I believe only played 3 snaps. Some of that might be injury related. But still, like he's already kind of being phased out here. I think that you almost, in football, you're always going to kind of platoon receivers because you can't just play 3 receivers, 70 snaps. It's just like you're just going to get tired. But I do think like roles wise and snaps wise, they just kind of have to find like, here are our 3 best receivers. We need to play them in these specific ways all the time. And that's just the way our offense is going to go. Like, I think that last year the Chiefs were so famous for how much they like spread the ball around, but that while that has benefits, at some point like there has to be a hierarchy of how you build an offense. And right now, outside of Travis Kelce, there isn't that hierarchy yet. So the Chiefs just like we've talked about with these like next 5-6 weeks, they need to like, here is our hierarchy. Here is our basketball rotation, for the lack of a better term. This is how roles are going to be distributed. And yeah, I think that's like a critical point for the Chiefs to figure out this year.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Kicking and Screaming starring Will Ferrell?
Oh, yeah.
So where there's the 2 Italian kids and then the whole offense is just pass it to the Italians, and he's just screaming it all the time. Like if you think about the best offenses in the NFL right now, they have lots of Italians, right? It's Devontae Smith and it's AJ Brown. It's Jalen Waddle and it's Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs have 1 Italian. They need more Italians, right? And until they get more Italians, there's going to be passing the ball all around. And if you've ever watched toddlers play soccer, it's just like an amoeba, right? Like everyone just follows the ball around, right? We need, until the Chiefs have, those playmakers, those Italians, they're going to struggle with this, right? And, so someone tweeted out, non-Chiefs person, after the first half that the Chiefs had completed like 12 passes to like 11 different receivers in the first half. And they said, is this too much? Is this what you want? And I think it's a great point. I'm not entirely sure it is what you want. And in this stretch of time, why not find out if give Justin Ross a 28% snap share here and see if he can actually do something with it. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, you don't want to treat this like a preseason game and find yourself in a battle with the Bears in the fourth quarter any given Sunday, all those cliches, but they've got some opportunities here to figure it out.
All right, so we're going to find out if Justin Ross is Italian this week. Price
I'll be like tweeting out like the pinching emojis, like when he catches a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and you guys will know what I mean.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. All right, so you kind of led me into my key, talking about this not being a preseason game and not wanting to get into a close battle with the Bears late in this one. But guys, my focus is going to be on the strength of the Chiefs so far. And Maurice, you kind of alluded to this as well. But this defense has been carrying the water for the Chiefs. And I don't think any of us were expecting this to be the case through 2 weeks. I don't think anybody anywhere expected them to look this good in conjunction with the Chiefs offense looking as average as they've looked through 2 games. But I don't know if this is a flash in the pan. I don't know if this is just a moment in time. But what I do know, if this is a moment, it shouldn't end this weekend against the Bears. You can look around the NFL and teams who struggle, and all of a sudden they see the Cardinals or the Panthers or the Texans on their schedule, and it's a get-right opportunity. I don't know if there's a word for it, but this is the exact opposite for the Bears. Justin Fields has not seen the leap through 2 weeks that we expected. There are comments about him thinking too much. He took one of the worst sacks I think anybody's ever seen last week, where he had plenty of time to throw it, but there's clearly not a lot of gelling or clicking going on for the Bears, which means even if you think this is sort of like a nothing game, a game that we won't remember at the end of the year, there is still something to be gained when good teams like the Chiefs play bad teams like the Bears. I know coaches like to say, a win's a win, whatever. If the Chiefs win by 1, Andy Reid will say something along those lines in the post-game press conference. But we don't have to follow those rules. A win is not a win. Like beating the Bears by 1 is not the same as blowing the doors off Chicago. And that's exactly what the Chiefs should do to this team. But they can't do it unless the defense continues to impose their will. And if this defense is legit, there is absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be doing that. And it starts up front with the pass rush. We saw the return of Chris Jones. I don't think any of us expected him to look that fresh. I mean, we knew he was a top 10 player in football, but for him to come out and look like the exact same player he was all of last year after missing all of training camp shows that, okay, we thought he was peaking last year. He might still be peaking here into 2023. This pass rush should absolutely have their way with Chicago. They've got one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Justin Fields is being sacked at a higher rate than any other quarterback in the league. It is a perfect storm for what we've seen so far to continue this weekend against Justin Fields. Like if he has a bounce back game, that to me is going to be a little bit concerning simply because this is the perfect opportunity for you guys to come out and say, yeah, actually we are for real. I know you may have doubted us the first couple of weeks, but we are a top 5 defense, a top 10 defense, whatever the case is in the NFL. And I think that all starts up front with the pass rush, which has looked better than expected. And it's not just Chris Jones, right? Like Mike Dana's looked great. Felix Anudike-Uzomah's looked good. George Karlaftis with a sack and a half through his first 2 games. Maybe he's taking a leap here into his sophomore season. You've got some horses. You've invested a lot of money and draft equity into that pass rush. And I think the Chiefs should continue to like make that an emphasis of we are going to beat you up front, especially while the offense is still trying to get right.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. For a long time, the Chiefs have just had this history of putting things in the bag and not taking out any good plays or anything like that, holding everything back against these lesser opponents. Think back to like the Rams game last year. The games just get clunky and ugly, and the Chiefs just seem to put nothing out there. I'm not really sure they can afford to do that this year. This kind of feels like, you know, when Alabama, I guess you'd say Georgia now, a real football powerhouse, whenever they schedule like Middle Eastern Maine University in week 2 and they just bludgeon them 71-0, the Chiefs kind of need that a little bit. And I agree with you. The Chiefs defense, everyone's talking about the Cowboys defense, and they've played Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson so far. The Chiefs defense is a great opportunity for them to like kind of put their mark on the season and say, hey, what if we just like hold them to 3 points and just have a dominant outing? Totally within the realm of possibility. And then, yeah, this is a get right game for the Chiefs offense. Like, let's not screw around and be, 2014 going into the fourth quarter. Like, let's get Blaine Gabbert some reps in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs have it in their ability. At this point, I would like to see the Chiefs have it before we can start holding things back. Like, let's prove we can do it before we hold anything back. So, obviously, Andy's got a play sheet. He's been calling plays deep into February several years in a row, but would like to see them stretch their legs a little bit.
You made a college football reference. Sorry. He made a college football reference, and we have to reference the fact that Nate's wearing an Iowa Hawkeyes hat. And while you're talking about that, it made me think like the Chiefs are the Iowa Hawkeyes of football through 2 weeks. Like we're going to play slow, or not slow necessarily, but like low scoring, grinded out games, 17-3. That's right where we want to live. I'm not signing up for that brand of football. So I hope this is just like a 2-week thing and we can get back to the Chiefs scoring 35 points a game. The
Chiefs have actually won a big game before. I would like to point that out.
Like at some
Maurice,
point,
sorry, what were you going to say?
Like at some point, the offense has to get on track. Is what we all think, right? Like at some point, the Chiefs' offense has to get on track. But I'm with both of you. I like the defense has to come out and dominate. I love what I've seen from the Chiefs' defense so far this season. Because I mean, the Lions nor the Jaguars are pushovers, right? And what they've been able to come out and do, definitely on the defensive front without Chris Jones, and then last week with Chris Jones, the defensive front looked very dominant, right? I think we've seen some of the best play we've seen out of Derek Nottie in a couple of years, right? He's been a steady presence. They had a lineup in there one time. I think Chris Jones and FAU was out on the edges, and they had Kalafis and Mike Dana in the middle, and like all of them won. Right, all of them did what they were supposed to do. Linebackers, I think me, Nate, and Price, without talking, end up pinpointing like great linebacker play this week in our articles on Arrowhead Pride. Like the linebackers have looked great, and this is just a game where I feel like they have to come out, make a statement. Like we going, because normally, like we say, the Chiefs don't dominate bottom tier teams like they should, because they like take their foot off the. This is a game where they have to come out and say a dominant defense will shut these boys out, and they shouldn't do anything until like the fourth quarter where backups are in.
I don't know if you guys are like me, but after the game last week, I went and watched a live reaction stream for the Jaguars, and they were like faces in hands. Our season is over. Our offense is broken. There is no reason for hope. There is no reason for optimism. Like the Chiefs defense made Jaguars fans feel like their season was lost in week 2. I don't think a Chiefs defense has ever done that in the Andy Reid era, where you all of a sudden are questioning, like, is Trevor Lawrence the guy? Like, is Doug Peterson, was last year it? Was that the peak? Like this never happens before. And I think the same thing needs to happen this weekend. Like, I want to go watch a Bears stream because I'm an internet sleuth on Sunday night. And I want fans saying, like, okay, the Justin Fields experiment's over, right? Because that's what will happen if the Chiefs go out and win this game 34-6 and the Bears offense continues to struggle. Absolutely. All right, should we get to game predictions?
Yeah, let's get it.
All right, Maurice, why don't you start us off? How do you see this one going?
I'm gonna go with what I hope, right? What I hope is that the Chiefs defense come out and dominate, and that the offense finally clicks and does what they're supposed to do on at least a higher level. I know once you get a big score, Andy's going to take his foot off the gas. That's what he always does. I'm going to go 27-10 in this one. Chiefs victory.
27-10. Okay, so that would be a comfortable cover for Kansas City. Nate, what do you got?
Yeah, it's just hard to even think about. I mean, the Bears, setting aside all the stuff that's already happened with their defensive coordinator this week, it really feels like they banked their entire season on them being able to win week 1 against the Packers, and then they get blown out, and everything since then has just been a tire fire. It's just an entire mess, the entire building, the front office, the coaching staff, the players. It just really feels like there's either only 2 ways this can go. One, this is just a insane desperation game where the Bears just come out and go for like on every 4th down, and they're doing like fake punts, and they're, you know, running Justin Fields like 25 times because they're like, if we lose this game, frankly, like if this is an embarrassing showing for the Bears, there's a chance their staff gets fired, or at least people on that staff, maybe not the head coach, but at least like the coordinators maybe get fired. And the only other way this would go is that the Chiefs just pull them out. And it's Thursday. The quotes inside the building are not getting any better. The vibes in the building aren't getting any better. So I just think it just doesn't feel like right now they're in the spot to really beat a good football team like the Chiefs. So I'm predicting the blowout. I compare this game to if people remember in 2020 when we played the 0-10 Jets, I think Adam Gase was still the coach and Sam Darnold was the quarterback, and the Chiefs won like 40-3. I think it's going to be something similar. I don't typically pick blowouts in the NFL, but I'm going to do it here. I think the Chiefs win 38-10.
Whew, that is a big win. Price, where are you going?
Yeah, it's hard because like I'm not sure if they've bottomed out yet. So what Nate's talking about, there's been some really bad vibes in the locker room. Not just the defensive coordinator stuff, but with some of the comments Fields has made. There's videos about DJ Moore being on the field with Devin White and saying, yeah, they're not using me right. There's a lot of bad vibes, and you can't tell if it's bottomed out yet or if this is the classic cornered animal that fights back. We talked about the potential shift and like what they're going to do with Justin Fields. But the bigger issue is I just don't see a way that offensive line is going to protect him, even if Justin Fields wasn't awful at taking sacks. And I just don't see the Bears defense being able to hold up against what the Chiefs can do just in their bread and butter. I imagine that this game will be a blowout for the most part, and they might let their old buddy Ryan Poles through the backdoor cover there. So I'm going to take the Chiefs 31, Bears 21.
You know, you started the show talking about the injury to Nick Bolton, and I think that linebacking core, like if they really have a chance to decide this game, because the Bears' only chance, not even of winning, because I'm not entertaining that, their only chance of scoring, their only chance of moving down the field and putting points on the board is if Justin Fields can get going with his legs, because at this point, there's no reason to believe he's going to be able to have success passing the ball. But as much as we have loved Leo Chenal and Drew Tranquill, like those guys have a chance to say like, okay, yep, we've got depth in this room. We can play, because it's going to be up to them to keep Justin Fields from getting going in the run game. If they do that, I can't really imagine, like if I'm trying to go through the worst case scenario, I can't really imagine how the Bears, even as bad as the Chiefs offense has been, how they're going to be able to keep up with Kansas City, because the one deciding factor is as bad as the Bears are on offense, they're equally as bad on defense. And right now, they look like one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL. So there's no way I can foresee or predict the Chiefs not winning big in this one. I'm going to go 31-13 Kansas City moving to 2-1. So we all have Chiefs wins. I think we went 3 with the cover. Price, you were the only one without it. So we're keeping receipts, and we'll see if the Chiefs can get the big win. And we'll discuss again next week. Fellas, pleasure as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. This is Kingdom Keys, the official pregame podcast for Arrowhead Pride. For Price Carter, Nate Christensen, and Maurice Elston, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you guys next week.